Now to another major development, today's announcement that the U.S. will have a sustained troop presence in Syria for the first time since the war there began. President Barack Obama deploying dozens of special forces to help in the fight against ISIS. As Jim Acosta reports, the White House insists they will not, though, have a combat role.
It's an escalation in the war on ISIS. The White House announced roughly 50 special operations forces will be deployed to northern Syria as part of what's being described as an intensifying strategy, including targeted raids against ISIS positions in Iraq and Syria, and a new push to retake the crucial city of Ramadi. But aides to the president stress it's a cautious move.
This is an important thing for the American people to understand. These forces do not have a combat mission.
White House officials maintain this won't be a repeat of the war on Iraq in 2003. But more like the raid U.S. forces joined last week to rescue Iraqi hostages. And the administration is not ruling out future deployments.
So it's possible that there could be further deployments.
Well, Jim, I don't want to try to predict the future here.
But the White House denies this is a presidential flip-flop on ISIS, despite repeated promises from Mr. Obama that U.S. ground forces won't be engaged in combat against the terror group.
American boots on the ground in Syria would not only be good for America, but also would be good for Syria.
We won't hold back from supporting capable partners in opportunistic attacks against ISIL or conducting such missions directly, whether by strikes from the air or direct action on the ground.
Are we going to fight with people who want to take a side down? Are we going to provide them military help?
Our train and equip program.
The answer is no. The answer is no.
Supportive of people who are fighting
let me
ISIL.
just.
So there were some tough moments during that hearing yesterday. Defense Secretary Ash Carter giving clues to a new strategy on ISIS as President Obama considers putting boots on the ground in Syria and moving special forces closer to the front lines in Iraq. Carter says the aim is to build, quote, battlefield momentum. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst with me now. Colonel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
He described it as the 3 R's: Raqqa in Syria, Ramadi in Iraq, and raids in both countries. Based on what you heard, will it work?
Well, we may indeed make some progress, but he talks about gaining battlefield momentum. The Russians and the Iranians are sprinting far ahead of us, and we're in a one-legged sack race. So the measures he promoted yesterday, they don't amount to a strategy. A strategy, Bill, that's a comprehensive plan to achieve durable long-term goals. What Ash Carter, Secretary of Defense Carter, articulated, and General Dunford, was a series of operational measures. Now, they're worth doing. They're helpful, but they're not going to be decisive. Now, the 3 R's, raids are useful, but they are by their very nature limited and not decisive. Ramadi, it's questionable whether the Iraqi military, whatever aid we give them, is going to be able to take Ramadi. Maybe, maybe not. Raqqa, the capital of the caliphate, that's a tough nut to crack. Islamic State will fight ferociously for it. Whether or not the Arab and Kurdish insurgents...
You got to take them all out then, Colonel. I mean, if you're going to win in Raqqa, you have to go in there to win. Is this a strategy that to you sounds like victory?
Well, no, it certainly doesn't. And Bill, you just nailed it. You've got to fight to win. And we don't fight to win anymore. We're so infected with political correctness that we're worried of collateral damage. Oh, my God, civilian casualties. Oh, no friendly casualties either. Thanks. Look, when you're fighting in a city against an opponent anxious to die for his cause, who regards death as a promotion, it's gonna be messy and ugly, and we're just not willing to do it. Meanwhile, the Iranians and Russians are willing to do whatever it takes. So these measures that were articulated by Secretary of Defense Carter are helpful to a limited degree. It is not a strategy to win, and we are crippling ourselves and the Russians and the Iranians. Everything we're doing now in the long term is helping them.
I thought his tone yesterday was reluctant, but only reluctant because he knows his hands are tied. I'd add a 4th R to that, and that would be Russia as well. Because right now, as Graham points out, Senator Graham in that soundbite there, this was a very good day for a dictator. Because Assad knows that in all likelihood he stays, or his chances of staying in power have just increased exponentially, Colonel.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true, Bill. And what we've got now, Lord help us, is a de facto division of labor, where we and the people we support fight ISIS, while the Iranians, Hezbollah, the Russians, and the Syrian army go after the people we've supported and everybody else. So, I mean, they are engaged in a policy of religious cleansing against Sunni Muslims in western Syria. We're in eastern Syria fighting Islamic State and helping them out. We're helping the bad guys.
Well, those are baby steps. Those are baby steps, and I just want to emphasize what you say. All these measures are useful. None is decisive.
And they're not strategic.
Colonel, thank you. Ralph Peters in Washington. More to come, Colonel. Thank you for your time today. 12 minutes now before the hour. Now on the Hill, the Pentagon's top brass has arrived, testifying on the U.S. strategy against ISIS. Defense Secretary Ash Carter, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Joseph Dunford set to testify. This as we get reports the president is considering recommendations that would move our personnel closer to the front lines in Iraq and put boots on the ground in Syria for the first time. Wow. Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger with me now, pilot in the Air National Guard. And, sir, welcome back to you. I know we've had strike forces go in and out of Syria, but this would be an entirely different deal. The focus would be on Raqqa in eastern Syria and Ramadi in Iraq, a town that was pretty peaceful just 4 years ago. What do you think is the right move?
Well, look, I think we do have to step up the fight. The president has been kind of obsessed with talking to the American people about what we won't do, what lines we won't cross. I think it's time to talk about what we will do, which is the fact that we're going to defeat ISIS, we're going to crush them, and in 10 years we'll look back and there'll be a footnote in history if we do this right. And so, look, Raqqa is their spiritual headquarters in Syria. This is the headquarters of the whole Islamic State. Obviously, Ramadi is a big fight in Iraq. So I think the more that we can be involved in, unfortunately, nobody likes to talk about it, but we're going to have to do some direct action. It's part of what I did in Iraq. We found people where we had the guys that are really fierce on our side, the special operators, come in and either kill or capture those people. And we continued that, got new intel, and unwound those networks until they were basically destroyed. And I think that is what we're going to have to probably do.
You have to commit to make that happen, as you well know.
Yeah.
Well, what's the number?
There'll have to be some real commitment.
What's the number of troops? Do the American people support it?
Well, I don't know the actual number. I mean, that's to the Pentagon and the president. What I think we need to have is the proper number so that we can inflict the amount of combat power necessary to unravel these networks. It's going to be a lot more of special operators. It'll probably be some people on the ground protecting them, surrounding the bases, keeping them safe. But I think, look, when this is all said and done, the American people want a president and a strategy that's going to defeat the enemy of freedom in America, not one that's necessarily going to look good in the newspapers.
It seemed like the fall of Ramadi is really what got the attention of those in Washington. You agree on that, yes or no?
Yeah, I agree. But keep in mind, 2 years ago, Mosul fell, Fallujah fell, where the Marines fought the hardest they had fought since Quezon. That's when we should have started bombing, but instead we waited a year and we allowed this organization to develop legs, tentacles, and frankly, it's almost a country.
But you can make these recommendations to the commander-in-chief. He doesn't have to act. He doesn't have to follow them.
No, he's got a tremendous amount of power in the Constitution, and this ultimately, the strategy that he puts in place is on him. It's his decision and his decision alone. He can take as much input or as little as he wants, but history will judge the president in terms of did he stop ISIS or did he give them an environment where they can explode. And I think pulling out of Iraq was the beginning of some bad choices.
Did Putin force his hand?
Maybe, to an extent. I mean, I don't think this president quite understands the threat that Putin poses and the threat that a Russia resurgent in the Middle East poses, not just for today, not just for the fight against ISIS, but 10 or 20 years down the road. So maybe it's forcing him to be a little tougher. I just love to see him be a little tougher against the Russians in Ukraine, for instance.
Well, we made a decision on Afghanistan. That strategy was changed, and now you're starting to see what has been a stalemate for several months. And according to reports out of Washington, the president said, let's figure this out. So what is the best way out of it now?
Well, I give the president credit for reversing strategy. I could have told you 2 years ago he was going to have to do this. I mean, everybody basically knew it. Again, I want to give him credit where credit's due, but at the same time, it seems like there's more of an obsession about troop numbers. 9,800, well, that's 4 figures instead of 10,000, which is 5 figures. 5,500, at the end of the year when we should stay at 9. I mean, so when it's all said and done, the president needs to make clear The Afghan people, 80% of them support the American presence in Afghanistan, and they want the Taliban defeated. So we're going to partner with them, probably going to be for quite a while, to be honest, with the end of the future, and the president just needs to make that clear.
Well, a lot of people saying no-fly zones are a no-go zone because it takes so many personnel to keep it under control, so perhaps that is not the option. It does not appear, based on the reporting, that that is where we are headed. We shall see. Sir, thank you for your time. Adam Kinzinger, the Republican from Illinois, thank you.